Hello everyone, welcome back to the War Room. And before we start Scenario 3, we're going to go back and just kind of quickly go over what we've learned so far in Scenario 1 and 2. In Scenario 1, we learned more about movement, and we learned more about mode determination. We learned how the mode of our chits, or our counters I should say, will have an impact on its combat and its ability to move. All right, very important stuff. And we use that as a building block to get into combat in the second scenario. And there we learned the basics of combat. We learned the basics of odds determinations, what an at-all-cost attack is and how that could be used. All right. We learned the basics of terrain modifiers and how that affects the combat roles table. All right. So now we're about to go into Scenario 3, which I'll move you over here really quickly. It's called Achtung Panzer, and we're going to build onto our combat. All right, we're going to learn about overruns. We're going to learn about surprise attacks. Okay, so let's talk about the objective. What you're looking at is the southeast part of the map, okay? In Achtung Panzer, we're going to be adding overruns and surprise into the combat that we've learned so far. The objective is for the Germans to destroy all Soviet Union units, okay? They're not going to act at all in this game. We're just going to use our units to end these guys and learn more about surprise and overruns. Now, the Soviet Union has a 10-1 infantry unit here and a 10-1 infantry unit here with a 12-4-3 or 12-4-6 tank brigade. The Germans have a battalion, a tank battalion, the 18th Panzer, along with a 7-4-3, 7-4-3, and a 2-4-8 surrounding it. The objective is to go over here, eliminate these units using surprise and overruns. All right, let's talk about overruns. So really quickly, I'm going to break the board here a little bit just to kind of show you an overrun, because overruns in this game are pretty important because for blitzkrieging, you need to be able to overrun. So it's an attack that can occur during movement phases, various movement phases in the game turn. So as long as it's during a movement phase, you can do a overrun. Your chits, or your counters, I should say, must be either in move, combat, or exploitation mode. Now, in order to make the attack, and this is going to be a little complicated, all right, you have to move the stack adjacent to the unit that you want to attack. So let's say we move here. Let's say this costs a point, all right, to move in. I'll declare my overrun. Now, here's how this works. Regardless of what units I have in here, I'm going to be spending 3 movement points to go into this hex. Even though this hex is only a half a point because of the road, I will always spend 3 movement points to go into that hex. It's very expensive. You're putting all your effort into this attack, all right? It's supposed to represent like all your resources, all your ability and energy going into this one attack. Every individual unit, however, must be able to move into this hex within up to 3 movement points. Now, this is only a half a point because it's a road, all right? So as long as they can all move into it, they're not going to lose any extra movement points. They're still only going to spend 3 in general to move in, but each individual unit must be able to actually get into this hex. It's just an abstract idea. All right, so I'm not going to be spending 3 points and then another half a point. I'm just spending 3, but I have to have that limitation, that ability to go into it. All right. Now, to resolve an overrun, it would be resolved as a normal combat. So during this move phase, you'd be doing this normal combat. You use normal modifiers, no special modifiers for overruns. If the defender retreats or is destroyed, the attacker must enter the hex. No buts about it. okay? If sufficient movement points remain for that stack, the attacker can continue more overruns. So you can keep going and going and going in that one movement turn. So it can be very destructive, all right? If the defender doesn't retreat, the attacker may spend 3 more movement points to attempt the overrun again. So if I attack and I fail, if I have enough to spend 3 more, then I can do it, okay? 3 more movement points. I can keep going again, all right? Now, let's talk about the restrictions to this rule. I know this is kind of abstract. This might be the most difficult rule to learn, but we have to get through this, all right? You can engage in an overrun as many times as the stack's movement allowance allows. That's all the units here, okay? Defenders can be attacked as many times as possible, so you keep hitting him every single time. Only units stacked together may conduct overruns, so you can't have units from other stacks. You know, you can't have a guy over here assist. Doesn't work. It's either one or the other. Only units that can enter the hex with 3 movement points or less can overrun. That's that rule we talked about. As long as they can get in there with 3 or less. Now, if it costs, like, let's say, 4 movement points, you can't do the overrun. Apparently, it's just too much for that stack to do it. But as long as each individual unit can go into this hex or 3 movement points, they can do this. All right. You're still gonna pay the max, even if it's only the half a point. But you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to have that limitation, that ability. All right. I know that's going to be the most difficult one to remember, even for me. You cannot use rail or roads to decrease the cost of MP or negate prohibited terrain. Okay. So if I'm overrunning, so technically this hex wouldn't even count. This would be 1. So I can't use the road for the half a point. This is a clear area. It'll be 1. So I apologize for that. So I'm clarifying that right now. So even if I'm going into this road, it's not a half a point. It's 1 point. I have to make sure I have 1 point for these guys to overrun. So right now, I can tell you right now, since I'm spending 3 points, and I've got this infantry unit here, he's not going to be able to make it. Most likely, he would have to be in a move mode because I would need more points just to get in, right? If you're going to, especially if you're going to do this several times. Like if he wasn't here and he had to move here, this deck would not be able to overrun. I would have to have this in move mode prior, if you can kind of visualize what I'm talking about. Overrun 1 hex at a time, no split attacks. So you can't split guys to go here and go here. You can't go up and then to the north and then to the east. Okay, you have to choose. Where are you going to go? Get him out of here. All right. No exploitation is earned during overrun. So just because I attack and I win, I hit that E on my combat roll table, it gives me exploitation. It doesn't matter. He doesn't get one. All right. If he's already in exploitation, that's one thing. All right. Attacking units that retreat and their movement and the remaining points is lost. So like I said, this is going to be an all-out attack on this hex. So if he fails and you decide to retreat, it's done. It's over with. All his movement, all his forward motion is done and over with for that round. So it's something to think about when you're doing these combat overruns. If you retreat, you're basically giving up any extra movement you might have. All right. No anti-overrun barrage if the attacker has surprise. So there is something called an anti-overrun barrage. So if he's not surprised and he's able to, he can launch artillery at your units and take a shot. But if they're surprised, which we are going to talk about that here in the next segment, then he cannot use anti-overrun barrage against you. All right. Units not capable to overrun may tag along, but they do not contribute to the overrun. For example, supply units. You have supply trucks or something that cannot do the overrun. All right. He can tag along in the stack. Once you start the overrun, you cannot split these guys up. They have to go forward. As long as they can enter the hex legally, as long as you can spend the 3 points, you can have as many units you want to go in here as you want. They just cannot contribute their combat points to the fight. And I just talk about friendly units and other units. Any other units could be in the area, but they don't contribute to the attack. So basically, overrun units are on their own in their stack. So our next rule we're going to talk about is going to be surprise. Now, it's funny, it's mentioned as optional, and throughout the book, at the back of the book, there's a whole bunch of optional rules, but there's this one, and there's one more, I can't remember what it was called, that's in the middle of the book that says optional. The way that it reads, it's almost as if the designers want us to use it. And so I'm going to use it. I'm going to add it into the game. So after the players identify their action rating units for a given combat, regular or overrun, check for surprise. Okay, simple enough. So no matter what we're doing, if it's a combat, we're going to check. Okay, we roll 2 dice, and we add to the roll the difference between the attacker's rating and the defender's. So, you know, if the defender has 2 and the attacker has 3, it's going to be a +1, right? That's kind of an example. A modified roll greater than or equal to 12 in a regular combat, 11 during overruns, results in attacking surprise. Roll 1 die and shift that many columns on the combat table to the right. So this is where you're getting your shifts, okay? I was wondering when that was going to come in, and apparently surprise is where it's done. So we roll the die and shift the final odds column on the combat table to the right. And then it goes on to say here that the defender is going to roll 2 dice as well. He's going to have, if he gets a modified roll of less than or equal to 2 in regular combat or 3 during overruns, results in the defending surprise. Roll 1 die and shift that many columns left. So it's possible that the defender, he can make you surprised as you come up. So, you know, so basically it's like going through the woods or something, and all of a sudden you come upon the enemy. All right, so it's not just the attacker, it could be the defender as well. All right, and so then he'll shift to the left, and then let's see, use the last available table column to resolve attacks with adjustments greater than the number of columns on the table. So if it goes further than what there are, you just use the last table. Now, there is some regulations to this. So in overruns, check for surprise after any at all cost announcements. So that's after, and before conducting an anti-overrun barrage. All right, simple enough. If the attacking player achieves surprise, no anti-overrun barrage is allowed. We talked about that briefly in the last segment. So the defender doesn't get the chance to, you know, throw some shots at you. All right. The type of attack, overrun or otherwise, determines the surprise roll needed for a given attack. So simple enough. It's not too difficult. It depends on who's defending, who's attacking, and then that gives you the number. Okay, so let's re-go over the concept of this particular scenario called Achtung Panzer. So the idea is to get familiar with the concept of overruns and surprises. Now that we've explained them in detail, here are the rules for the Soviet units. 1, Soviet units are to sit in their hexes in combat mode in order to be targets. There is no Soviet player turn. There is no Soviet reaction phase. Soviet units may take optional results as retreats and do so. Any disorganization results on a Soviet unit lasts for the remainder of the game. All right? So this is just a very simple learning procedure to learn surprises and overruns. So we're going to do that. So I am going to set up my stack. All right, I have 3 points of stacking here. All right, and I think for the purposes of this particular game, I think I'm going to move some guys into movement mode. All right, to give me some more attack movement power. All right, because these 2 regiments are just not fast enough in their combat mode. I got a couple of guys in 8 and 7. So let's just take a look. So the 7 is the most minimum I have. All right, so, and these are 1 points apiece, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this guy wouldn't be good. I'd have to flip him. Okay. Remember what we talked about for overruns, right? I want to try to do an overrun and we only have 1 turn to do this, so I have to get this done quickly. So I want to be able to get here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. The slowest unit I have is an 8, right? 12 and 12. I have to have at least 3 points of movement to be able to overrun this unit. So I will, because the lowest guy I have is 8. All right. So we'll do that. Let's move our stack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. We did our movement, our mode determination. We're doing our movement. All right. Soviet units do not have reaction. We're going to go into our combat phase. All right, and we're going to figure this out right now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to roll 2 dice for a surprise. All right, we got to determine what our DRM is. So my best unit has an action rating of 5. That's between the 2 and the 14. The Soviets have a 2, so I'm getting a +3 for the Germans. All right, I'm going to roll my dice for the Germans. I'm going to add 3 to the dice roll. And then the Russians are going to roll. And that difference is going to determine what the outcome will be. Now, for an overrun, if I roll an 11 or higher, the Germans will get the surprise. If it's anything less, if it's 3 or less, it will be the defender's surprise. And then we'll go on from there. So let's go ahead and figure this out. So I'm going to roll the first 2 dice. 5, it was a 6. So that's 9. I'm going to roll 2 more for the defender. And that's 4. So 9 take away 4 is 5. So there is no surprise. Simple as that. Okay? So there is no surprise. We're going to go into the regular overrun combat. So now we're going to go into the combat segment. Again, the only difference is that we are here in the movement phase. All right, let's read out the summary. All right. Summary is as follows. The attacker identifies defending hex and attacking ground units, which we have already. All right, the attacker announces whether it is an at-all-cost attack. We won't do that. All right. Both players expend their supply points. We don't have to do that in this particular scenario. Next, we're going to identify our action range, which we already did. We have the 2 and the 5, so it's a +3 for the attacker. Then we would determine the surprise, which we already did. We don't have to do that again. So now let's figure out the determination here, the final thing. All right. So let me move you here a little bit. All right. So this is open area. Okay. So that is a 1 times for all the regular units. Okay. So these guys here, all the different units here, it's going to be, 3, 1 times 3, 1 times 3, 1 times 2. So that's what, 3, 6, 8. All right. However, this guy is going to get a ×2 because he is a tracked unit, which is 4. So we have 12 to 10, which doesn't matter. It's still a 1-to-1 odds. Okay. And since I'm picking this guy, since I picked him during my surprise, I'm going to have to use him again as my action rating. So any damage I get will go to this battalion first. And if I get hit, he's definitely going to be destroyed. All right, but I get a +3 to my attack roll. So here we go. Now the second player gets to go. Now that would be the Soviets, but they don't do anything. They're not going to change their modes. They're not going to move. Reaction, I'm not going to set anybody into reserve at this point. All right, so, and since I can't reach anybody in combat, I'm going to be done with this particular segment. Now I'm going into player turn 2. And we're going to repeat player turn 1 sequence all over again. So we're going to do our mode determination. We're going to figure out how I want to handle this, right? So now that I'm closer than I was, I'm going to bring in the big guns, okay? Because I don't want to lose again. Okay. My biggest problem is I don't think I'm going to win. I don't think the Germans are going to win this particular round. I don't see it happening with the odds I have. So I think what I'm going to do is 7, 8, 9, and 7. All right, 1, 2. We're going to attempt an overrun. 1, 2. Movement. All right, so he's going to be a regular movement. These guys are going to be an overrun. All right, that's what we're going to attempt. All right, I hit 1, 2. Nope, no overruns. We're going to do regular combat because I don't have enough. So we're going to do regular combat. We're going to do the surprise all over again, and let's see what happens. So we'll start with our little guy right here. All right. So I have a 4. He has a 2, so I have a +2. Okay, I'll roll mine. I got 7 plus 2, which is 9, compared to his 7, which is 2. He gets a surprise attack again, all right? So he gets a 3. We're going right into the combat phase. So he moved back, all right? I'm flying through it at this point, guys. I'm not going to keep dragging this one out. So now this particular one is 4 to 4. I don't think I have a better one. Let's see. I got 4 to 4 to 4. So it's going to be 0 DRMs. All right, we're going to check for surprise. All right, so 0 DRMs. I got 11 for the attacker and 11. So that's a 0. That's a modified 0. So that is going to be for the defender. They're going to roll again. 6, so all the way to the left again. Not very good for the Germans this time around. So we're all the way to the back half there. I rolled a 5, which is the attacker loses 2. All right. So my first hit has to go here, and this is a regiment, so he has to go as well. Those 2 units are done. Okay. So I'm going to end the game here because there's no tactical way I can win this game. I'm not going to drag out the episode. So we learned about surprise. Now, surprise, from what I've learned, is really, really going to set you up for success or failure, depending on how well you roll. All right. I can see why the designers wanted to put this rule in here, and they were adamant about it. They kind of put little cues everywhere into the rule book. It could change a whole thing here. Because, you know, the Soviets can't even attack me, and yet I'm losing, right? But because of that surprise roll, that's everything in this game, all right? The overruns were pretty easy to learn. You have to make sure you have enough movement points, not only to get adjacent to where you want to go, but you have to have 3 to be able to move into the space where you want to go. On the next episode, we are going to be learning in scenario 4, enter the rear echelons. This scenario adds supply, specialized units, and barrage combat. That, my friends, is why I got into OCS, is because of the supply. All right, so very simple rules. I'm glad we got through this. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know how you guys liked it. Like, subscribe, and share.